This is Kathryn Goetzke, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. We are here to share science, stories, and strategies for how to hope. I'm the Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company, and Shine is the mnemonic for how we teach hope. So when we talk about hope, we talk about how we use stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges, which are our thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. Hope is a skill. You can measure hope, you can teach hope, and you can start practicing skills to activate higher hope in your life today. And on this Hope Matrix podcast, we aim to bring in guests, experts in science, people with stories, and those that have strategies for activating hope in your life.
Hello out there. This is Kathryn Goetzke, host of the Hope Matrix podcast, and grateful to y'all for listening in, where we talk about science, stories, and strategies for hope. Just a little reminder, hope is measurable, and as we've been able to show, hope is teachable. So today we have someone really incredible that I just met now, but we've been chatting a bit on LinkedIn, Thomas Harris, and I met Thomas actually through Leslie Wyrick. She had, he'd read a post that on a interview that we'd done previously, and reached out, and I just knew right away that I wanted to connect with him, talk to him more. And he's doing some incredible work with veterans and athletes and the homeless population and addicts, working with them really ultimately on hope. So really grateful to have you joining us today, Thomas, and sharing more with us. So I want to welcome you here.
Thank you so much, Kathryn. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So, we started with just a more, not formal, but just give me a little bit of background. Who is Thomas? What are you up to? What are you doing? What have you been doing? Share a little bit more with our listeners about that.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, and made the great escape to Middle Tennessee, which is where I currently reside. And it's been a great transition for myself and my family. My wife and I were born and raised in California, and we saw opportunities to relocate and start anew here, and it's been a great transition for us. And my kids have been thriving since arriving here 2.5 years ago. And, I served 4 years in the United States Navy, working on submarines as a sonar technician. Working on subs is not for everyone, clearly, but it was fitting for me at the time. I went through my own struggles with the transition, just trying to find out what else is my identity. So the experience in the military is one where people have an opportunity to kind of figure out who they are or what they're supposed to become. And so I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to join the military. So I did that for 4 years, and kind of stumbled around for a bit as a married guy and trying to figure out how to be a husband and a dad, and did a lot of customer service experience with Trader Joe's for about 15 years. And in that process, I was kind of learning how to learn about humans and behavior and experiences, and provide a lot of one-on-one consulting, pro bono. But I began to find out what my niche was, which was relationships and helping people to try to figure out life. I did that through first starting to understand who I was as a person and discovering what my purpose was. So worked with addicts and alcoholics back in Santa Monica, California, and then moved from there to Middle Tennessee, where I work in the homeless population, serving those who are underserved, and also got connected with a transition program for military veterans and former athletes. So I'm still very involved in those things outside of my 9 to 5 job every day, and just try to do what I'm passionate about. And here we are.
Yeah. Those that can't see Tom, you have such a calm demeanor about you, like I bet people so connect to that and just feel immediate safety with you. I mean, there's just a really wonderful presence about you.
Thanks. I work in a very chaotic environment, and all the time people look at me and say, "How do you stay so calm?" And my reply is usually, somebody's got to be the calm in the chaos. So that's just how I'm wired. That was by design, and I'm just trying to stick to the script.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And you're also so wise. I mean, just in the few minutes I talked to you before we even jumped on here, you're just so much wisdom. So I'm grateful to you for taking time today and sharing some of that with our listeners. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So a really interesting background going from LA to Mississippi. Yeah. Mississippi.
Oh, to Tennessee.
Tennessee.
I said Middle Tennessee.
Oh,
maybe that threw you off.
Tennessee. Yeah. I mean, yeah, so different. I mean, how's the trip? How do you like it? Is it a...
Oh man, we love it here. It was the best move ever for my family and I. So we're grateful to be here and grateful for the community that we've become a part of so very quickly. It was no struggle trying to connect here. Some really great people here that we met and grown very close to the people here. And this is where we're supposed to be in this season. So here we are.
That's awesome. It's interesting. You know, anytime we go through significant life changes, our hopelessness goes up. And so it's like being really proactive about, and so we never know how moves are going to go, or, you know, and that can be a time when we can really struggle and not even be aware. So it's great. It's wonderful that it's
God has been gracious and very giving to us. So we're blessed.
It's wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about you and your story. And, you know, we start in our initial, we talk about writing your hope story. And it's this framework that we have. And, you know, we all have a hope story, and we all have actually many hope stories. And, you know, our day to day we could write a hope story about it. But we write hope stories to share kind of with others challenges that we've been through, and then really specific skills that we used and things that we did to kind of help navigate that. So that's kind of what we want to talk about today. So wondering if we can start by you just sharing a little bit more about, you know, some of the struggles you've had or challenges.
Yeah, my struggles and challenges began very early on as a child. There was, a long period of time, like pretty much my whole childhood, you know, where I could be surrounded by those who love me, but still never really feeling like I belonged. The struggles of feeling insignificant and not having purpose, and just not thinking that your life really matters. I fell behind very early in school because I was in this large classroom setting where I just got lost. You know, it was like being in the open sea and you're fluttering around and there's no life vests and there's no, what's the thing they throw out? The lifeboat or...
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just that feeling like I'm too afraid to ask for help because I'm that insecure, and I used to say I was a borderline mute because I just didn't talk much and just didn't think that my words had any value, and so I just stayed silent. But the one thing I did do, which was a positive for me, was that I observed a lot. I observed the world around me, which was for the most part, there was a lot of dysfunction in my world, my environment. Living, in a single parent, home for most of my childhood. My parents were split, once they had 2 kids, after a couple of years, they were split, and they were never married, and they were both kids, and they tried to do the best they could, but they did it separately. But I'm grateful for life because of the life I have today. But early on, it was a huge struggle. And the biggest part of that, like I said, was just that feeling of insignificance and not having purpose. So it was rough in the beginning.
So how did you navigate that? I mean, it's amazing to me that maybe over half of our kids don't feel they have anyone they trust or can count on, trusted adult in their life, or anyone that believes in them.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we do for kids, and how do we solve this?
Kids need to know that they, one, are loved, and that's just basically telling them every day. A lot of dads have issues with being transparent and showing emotions with their kids. So, there's this stigma of men having to be tough all the time. And that's a big thing with the military, is like you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you just figure it out. I learned by the guys I've surrounded myself with that you can be transparent, you can be real, you can show emotions, you can cry when it's time to cry. Because I didn't cry growing up because I just bottled all my emotions up, because I just didn't know what to do with my emotions. So it was just keep them to yourself. And at some point there's a breaking point where it just falls apart. But it can be a good thing, because there are timely events in our lives that happen that ground us and bring us to the reality that we are fragile individuals. Human beings are very fragile. Even when we think we're strong, we are fragile. We can break at any moment. So kids need to know that it's okay to show your emotions. It's okay to vent when you need to vent, but they need to know that they're being heard. And because those things get compounded over time and they become adults that still behave like children because they've never had the freedom to express their emotions. So my kids know that they can talk to their parents at any time when they're going through stuff, because we show them that they're loved and appreciated, and their lives have value. So, we have to be open for that for our kids, because the way society is today is there's some really messed up people in the world today because they don't have an outlet to express what they're dealing with. So they just kind of find different ways to figure it out that are not healthy. And I think it all starts in the home. I believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with broken homes and addiction and, violence in the homes and kind of all of these compounding factors, it can become really challenging, and if parents aren't taking care of their own mental health, and there's stigma in, different generations, so, really not addressing it, and that all gets kind of translated to the kids. So we have a program for young kids, and the first thing we do is, how do you identify and manage your emotions in healthy ways, and how do we normalize our conversation around it? It's so critical, and we have parents' guides, so parents can learn about hope and use hope language at home. And yet, again, some of what we see is there is so much so many unhealthy things happening in the household. And so, I always tell teachers, tell your kids you love them. We're just the school nurses. Got to love our school nurses, our teachers, our kids. Like, we all need love. It's such a basic human need.
Yeah, I just saw a horrible video of a mom coming to get her kid. And this kid probably wasn't more than 8 years old. And it was just screaming and cursing and threatening rant. And there was a couple ladies, I guess they were stabbed, that were standing there. They didn't know what to do. And this woman just really went in on her child and was saying, I will come back here and break your face, and it's you and me, and just cursing. Like, I was just like, people were commenting like, this is how it was when I grew up, like as if that's no big deal. It's like normal. It's supposed to be normal, but it's like, it's not. There's one thing that's physical trauma that people experience from childhood, but the emotional trauma is just as bad or sometimes worse, because it really tells you that you are worthless. You have no purpose in this world. You'll never become something, because we are our worst critics. And if you listen to the voices that you speak into your life, it's going to have a very negative impact over a long period of time. And until you deal with that and move forward from that and begin to find the value and purpose in your life, then you're going to continue to go downhill, because there's no hope for you. And that's the magic word, is hope. Do you have hope? And I know that's what you promote in this whole thing is hope. And that's a very big word in my vocabulary. Hope keeps people alive. It keeps people going. It gives you something to look forward to. And it really begins to sink in as you keep telling yourself, there is hope. You have fuel to keep going through life, no matter what the challenges are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have so many challenges, that's kind of the reality of life, and it's how we navigate those challenges.
Right. And
we've got to learn how to hope. So it's like, to me, I was told I had to have hope. I'm like, I don't know how to get there. From where I'm at, I don't know how to hope. And so coming up with a way to start teaching that more as a skill, that like, no, if you understand hopelessness, which is both emotional despair, so you feel bad, that emotional part we talked about,
right,
and then motivational helplessness, you feel powerless or you can't do anything about it. Well, how do you get out of your despair to feeling better, and how do you get from helplessness to action? And the thing about it is your emotional despair always ends. Like, we can't stay sad forever. We don't stay angry forever. We're not afraid forever, likely. And our helplessness, like, there's always something we can do. It might not be what we want to do. It might not, we might have to re-goal something or change what we hope for. When I lost my dad to suicide, it's like I couldn't have my dad here. There were so many things to be hopeless about. I had to learn, like, what can I do? I can create other male role models or mentors, or, kind of start filling those gaps. But it was not until I learned the skills of how to hope that I actually was able to start putting that into action, and then seeing, oh yeah, I can really always navigate these challenges. I just have to use the skills, and it's really up to me to do that,
Yeah. And looking through the lens of that person that took their own life, seeing the hopelessness that they had, and you realize that it doesn't work the way they engaged with their feeling of despair, or didn't engage in that. So I have to look at that when I think about my dad, when I think about the 22 plus veterans that commit suicide a day. I have to think about, what are they actually going through, to try to better understand those struggles and focus on those positive things that I have in my life that will keep me from going that route. I used to think, what would it be like if I didn't wake up tomorrow? Would people even care? I was never, suicidal myself, but I used to wonder a lot, like, would people even care if I'm not here tomorrow? But to begin to understand that people are, going through it in their mind, and they keep playing that same broken record that tells them they're nothing. And They just need to just turn the noise off altogether, and not having a way out,
Yeah.
And that was my dad. He didn't have a way out, but he wasn't real with this situation, and he didn't share. He didn't reach out and ask for help because of pride, and a big part of it is pride. So
yeah, and your dad died by suicide, correct?
Correct. Yes.
When
Yeah.
was that?
I think it's about 13 years ago.
Yeah.
What we found out on my youngest brother's 19th birthday, and we found out the whole thing was planned. Yeah, it was just very surreal, and it's just something you could never imagine or think was a possibility. But I didn't want to believe it. Initially, I was very angry and disappointed. I had to learn to forgive my dad because he was in a position where he didn't have any hope left, and there was no other way that he saw that was going to get him out of his circumstances. So, I began to, have that empathy, sympathy for his situation. And I got his mail, for weeks after, and I began to really see what his struggles were through his mail. And, it was a lot. It was a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I often say when it's too many things that we're experiencing hopelessness about, like bring it down to one thing that you can start working on today. If it's a relationship, finances, housing, all of these things, I'm like, take one thing, and think of how can I work on my despair around it? So how can I feel my emotions, work on and then how do I get from helplessness? What's like a little thing I can do, or what is a path? How do I start taking action around this? Or how do I connect with someone that knows how to take action around this? Or, I don't need to fix it all today, but like, how can I chunk it down into little tiny things and just do one thing, so that, and we know that as you start doing those little things, you start feeling better. And then as you start feeling better, you start feeling more capable of then starting to do addressing other things. That's what, there's, so many things that people experience hopelessness about, yet there are so many examples of people that have navigated those things and gotten to the other side. And it's like learning the skills for how to do that,
Yeah. One of the biggest enemies that we have is isolation.
Yeah.
I like to say that isolation is the devil, because you are left alone with all the negative thoughts that you have tracing through your mind.
Yeah.
And you go from hearing the voices to actually speaking them back to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the danger that a lot of veterans face is isolation.
Yeah.
So we were created to be social beings. We were created to be in community. That was God's design for us as human beings, is to be in community. And that means sharing one another's burdens. When someone's down, they're looking around for someone to lift them up because they don't have the strength to get back up. And I'm grateful for community in my life because that keeps me going, and, we all go down.
Yeah.
We fall down 100 times in a day.
Yeah.
Do you have the strength to get back up? And if you don't have the strength to get back up, you have to say, hey, I need a hand. Yeah. And your brothers and sisters are around you to lift you up when you don't have that power to rise yourself up. So that's the key, I believe, in us going through our challenges, is that we have community to lift us up when we don't have the strength to get up.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we talk about with our nourishing networks, that it's really important to be intentional about who we surround ourselves with and to cultivate relationships. And, we've got to work on relationships. They don't just happen. And so, we got to set goals around them, and we've got to get support in creating stronger relationships. And, you've got to make an effort to make friends, and we've got to know where to go for support. So how do you create, nourishing networks in your life?
Oh, gosh. Good question. I mean, I have so many different groups of people that I connect with. I just become it, I had a very transformative time where everything started to make more sense. The age of 21, from the age of 18 to 21, beginning part of 21, I call those my blackout years, where I just was not doing anything that was rewarding or promising for my future. And I was fortunate enough to see a glimpse of the next 5 years of my life at the age of 21, and I didn't like what I saw. But it became, part of that became just being more intentional about what I already knew I needed to do. And what I saw was I needed to completely remove myself from the environment that I was in at the time. And that's the time I decided to join the military. And I did a podcast. I started a podcast this year, and it's called Just Being Intentional. And that was the key moment. I believe that there's one distinct decision that you make in your life that changes the entire course of the rest of your life. And joining the military for me was that moment where everything changed, because I was being intentional about making a positive change in my life that was going to benefit my future. So that's what I did. And I found meaning, I found purpose, I found God. And when I graduated from boot camp, it was the first time in my life that I was proud of something that I did. Like, high school graduation was like, I felt like I didn't deserve this. But when I graduated boot camp, I was like, I set out on this mission to do this thing, and I saw it through to completion. And the pride was there. I felt like I actually accomplished something. And things started opening up from there. I built on my relationships. I sought out relationships to cultivate, and I found out what my purpose was, and it gave me motivation, it gave me value. And yeah, I just found like this is what I was made to do, is to have relationships and then encourage people, and that has given me fuel. And when you're being fulfilled about something that you're doing, you just want to keep doing it, because you feel good about it and you feel like you're making an impact on the world. So that's been my mission, is to be of service to others.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's part of our happiness habits that we talk about, fulfilling our purpose and passion, pursuing our passion. And
right.
It's so important to get those positive hormones, and setting goals and reaching goals, and all of that fuels those happy hormones that help us combat those stress hormones. And you bring up a really important point, I think, and I've, done some work with the VA, and one of the biggest challenges, and with veterans as well, is just reacclimating back into society after being deployed or in the military. And
right.
You kind of can see it so clearly when you articulate what the military brought to you, and then you get kind of brought back to home and you don't have any of that really. How did you kind of reintegrate and take that, obviously knowingly, and creating that in community? I mean, it's pretty brilliant that you did that well, probably with intention, but so important. And I think so many struggle with that.
I had my transition period where I was still trying to figure things out, but I knew that, I had a wife, I had kids, so I was like, I had to be busy. And it wasn't very easy, but the thing I learned about the military, what they do a tremendous job with, in basic training, they look at this, 17, 18, year old person that just graduated high school and has no kind of, road to what they want to be, because they're just kind of rudderless, and they haven't figured it out, and they don't want to go to college, blah, blah, blah. But they look at this person, this young person, this kid, and they say, I don't like what I see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear it down and I'm going to build it back up to what I want it to be. And you do that, you go through that process, and then you spend 4 years to 20 years plus, and that becomes your identity. The problem is when you decide one day, I don't want to do this anymore, that's all you've known from the point you became an adult, and you don't know anything else. I look at it like, the movie Back to the Future, where Marty is in 1955 and he comes back to his time in 1985, but it's a different 1985. He's not familiar with it because it's an alternative 1985. So with our veterans, they are in this bubble for so many years where this is the life that they know. Everything is commonplace. Like, I know what I'm going to do every single day, and there's the structure. You get outside of that, it's an alternate universe, because the world that you left is not the same world that you've transitioned into. So the struggle is, these civilians are idiots because they don't understand what I've been through. And the best thing to do, because they don't want to understand me, and they ask stupid questions like, how many people did you kill while you were in there? I just choose to separate myself from them altogether. And that's what isolation comes in, because I'm trying to navigate and figure out what the next steps are, but I can't find anybody that can relate to my experience. And I don't trust these people. I have trust issues. For me, I kind of took a different route. I remember hearing about the stories of people getting brainwashed while in the military. And I said to myself, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to do my job, but I'm not going to fully involve myself to where I'm going to be one that's brainwashed. So I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I think it was a built-in protective mechanism that I had. And I was at times like this active duty guy with the uniform on, but I was also a civilian on the side. So I was kind of playing two roles. And I had some of my own trust issues with the government to begin with. So I think that's what made it a little bit easier for me to transition, because I protected myself mentally and emotionally so that I wouldn't feel like I was stuck.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best way to explain it.
Yeah. Did you have community when you came back? I mean, did you?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't have a lot of interaction with the veteran community for years. It wasn't until probably 15, 16 years later that I actually got reconnected with the veteran community, which is back in 2016. And even to today, I'm very involved in being connected with my peers. And it's been great, because that's part of my purpose, was to encourage and help motivate our vets to figure out what else they're supposed to do in life, because you can't be what you used to be. Just like athletes, every athlete is one play away from ending their career, and then you're stuck with like, what else am I going to do? And you have to figure that out.
Yeah. That's what we call re-goaling, and of course you become hopeless and in persistent hopelessness and develop clinical anxiety and depression. I mean, it's just so predictable.
Yes.
Because you're in despair and you feel helpless about it. So it's like, you gotta be, I love that your podcast is about intention, because we have to be very intentional, and we think all of these things just kind of happen naturally, and they don't. And we can, I would slide to despair and helplessness about so many things without even realizing it. And once I became really intentional about cultivating hope in my life and understanding what does cultivate hope and how do I continue to foster that? I mean, yeah, once I became very intentional about cultivating hope in my life and strengthening hope, I did that. But I mean, I had to be aware of it first, and that's really what intention is all about. Tell me a little about your podcast. Curious.
Yeah, I was just going to get into that. You remember the year 2020, right?
I do.
Who does it?
Just talking about that, yeah.
Yeah. So the podcast was motivation from what happened in 2020. For a lot of people in the world, COVID, the pandemic was detrimental. It was devastation for a lot of people's lives. But for me, it became more of an opportunity. Because during that time, with the riots and all the COVID stuff, I took an opportunity for myself, and I guess it became more of a challenge for me was, just observing people's social media posts. The people that are posting all day, every day, less posts, people only posting the happy stuff. But I began to do some digging, found out there were people really that were struggling. One of my buddies, veteran buddy, was posting some weird stuff on Facebook. It was Facebook live videos, and very bizarre behavior. And I knew a little bit about his background, mental health issues, some substance abuse. But the guy was posting weird videos of him just walking down the street at night, and they got more and more bizarre to where he got to the point where he drank bleach on the video, and the next morning he was found and was in the hospital, and he ended up dying from kidney failure. So basically seeing a guy I knew that took his own life on social media, and what I began to do was go through the contacts on my phone, and I was just I was going down the list, and I was just calling people and just checking in on them. And I found that there were people that were like going through divorce, people that were losing their homes, and just all kinds of domestic issues, and not to mention they were just afraid to come out of the house. And so what I did is I just called, checked on people, I texted them, and some of those conversations were very timely because they needed someone to check in on them. And you and I know that you think of 100 different people a day, you see their faces in your mind, and you wonder what they're up to right now. But you can take it a step further by picking up the phone and taking a few minutes to check on them. And, it became a very rewarding thing for me. And I got addicted to it. My commutes home were long, so I was like, I can take advantage of this horrible LA traffic and just spending that time and checking in with people. And I didn't realize how long I was driving because I was like on autopilot, but I was engaged with the person on the other line because they needed somebody to check on them. So that was what led to this podcast, which was a thing that was built on fear, the fear of I don't know what I'm doing. I had brought it up to some people, and I said, I was thinking about doing this podcast, but I don't know the first thing about doing a podcast. They said, well, you just got to do it. And I was like, yeah, but like I said, I don't know how to do it. So I was at a Christmas party before last Christmas, and as I was leaving, I met a guy, and I had met his wife a little while before that at the party. And we got to talking, and I introduced myself, and I was on my way out of the party, and I asked him what he does. He said, my wife and I help people with podcasts. And I was like, Oh, okay. So we connected, and he became my producer. He could do the things that I don't know how to do, and I just get the people to talk to and talking, and it's been great so far. But yeah, just being intentional is like the things we know intuitively that we're supposed to be doing, but we just haven't begun, or we kind of stalled out. And those are the things that kind of, for me personally, if I don't do something I know I'm supposed to do, it just haunts me. It's always there, looking over my shoulder, like, get it together, Thomas. Get it together. What are you waiting for?
Right.
You're a lifetime procrastinator, and you need to be about action now. And I literally gave myself a halftime speech when I became 40, which was now 10 years ago. It's like, get it together, brother. You got some stuff to do. You got work to do. So being more intentional. So that's been my mantra.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And, and procrastinating, chunking it down to one step, taking that one step, moving things forward. So important.
Yep.
That's awesome. So it's called what? The intention?
Just being intentional with Thomas
Just
Harris.
being intentional. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll check it out. We'll put a link. It's by Thomas Harris, everyone. Yeah.
Yes.
I know. So we talk about in our happiness habits, we talk about got to be really intentional about them. And when we go through challenges, we stop doing things that bring those happy hormones, but that's when you got to be doing them. So it's like you set an intention to do them, and then you work intentionally to, practice them. Practice the nutrition when you go through stressful times.
Yeah.
Sleep is important. Exercise is important. All of these things. Are you big on these? Do you?
Yeah. One of the things I wrote down was I'm a big movie guy, and one of the things I was intentional about, which was a long time ago, almost 20 years ago. I've always been like a storyteller at heart, and I was challenged with writing a movie script. And
wow.
Yeah, just something that came up, and I was like, I should write a story. And I ended up meeting a trio of people that I went to church with that had a small production company, and they gave me this screenwriting software, and I hammered out this it was a lot. It was over 120 pages.
Oh my God.
And kind of like a challenge to myself, like, yeah, I actually wrote a script, and I got it registered with the Writers Guild. And I just sat on it for years, and I just dug it up again, probably almost 2 years ago, and I went through it a couple more times, and I met a guy who's a filmmaker, and he gave me some pointers on it, and it's something I feel like is going to be on the screen one day, because I believe in the story, and I believe that is powerful, and it can impact the world. So anything that I feel is important enough or impactful enough, I want to make sure that I put it out there, because you never know. Even if it's only one person that's going to be affected, I know that's what the purpose of it was for.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so important. I mean, a number of things you brought up important. First, impacting one person is meaningful and matters, So if you're inspired to be doing something, do that. Don't worry about the numbers. I think that's
right.
Yeah. So, and if people don't understand now, maybe they will someday. You can't get attached to that outcome of it. So yeah, I love that. But I also go ahead. Yeah. No.
Just like the podcast, it was, some people may love it. Some people will like it. Some people may hate it, but I can't worry about those that are not going to appreciate it. But if I get the positive feedback from the people that say, man, you did a really good job with that, I was like, then it was meant for that one person. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And I love that you just dug that script back out, because it's like we set these superficial timelines, but It's like the timelines unfold when they're meant to unfold. So I love reading the story about people that have the successes in their 80s. It's like we can become really hopeless if we think we're supposed to have done it by a certain age or a certain time or in a certain amount of time. And yet, if you let inspiration, I mean, to me, it's divine inspiration, kind of guide you, then the timing comes in it all unfolds perfectly in 20 years, 40, whatever it is,
Yeah. And I had to learn to, because I am a believer, I had to learn to not only surrender, but to trust, because anyone can surrender, but you're still holding on to my own will.
Yeah.
But when you trust, you have so much more freedom in trusting.
Yeah.
Because it's not all about you.
Yeah.
It's not all about you. Where I work, I have to teach my staff. It's like, hey, don't come into work thinking it's about you. It's really not.
Yeah.
It's about what is the mission here? What are we supposed to be doing here?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be serving this population, and these are people that don't know their left hand from the right, and you have to help them to try to figure it out. And don't bring your feelings into the mix, because it's going to be a bad day for everyone.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk just a little bit about your stress skills. I don't think we've talked about that, and I always love hearing what people's favorite stress skills are, how they're managing their stress response, and
let me look at
overall
stress skills. Okay. So I'm looking at my notes.
Yeah, nice.
I put allowing myself the opportunity to go through the grieving process was vital. And that's, talking about my dad's situation, taking time to process. Where I work, I deal with people that are overdosing. I've saved, probably 5 lives since I've been there. And, it's about taking action, appropriate action. You see this person's, their life is hanging in the balance. It can go one way or the other. And there's a natural fear as a human being that I don't know what to do. So you freeze up.
Yeah.
My mind says, take action, right or wrong, do something. And to just take the action and not think about which way it's going to go, but just doing what needs to be done. And then that person comes out on the other side, like they actually survived because I was willing to take the action. And I get to go and process it afterwards.
Yeah.
So the thing with my dad was I had to take time to process and embrace it for what it was. Like, this happened.
Yeah.
And being real and honest about it, but then really starting to process, like, how do I move forward? What are the necessary steps I need to take? We were encouraged to host a grief share group at our home, and invited people to come in and talk about grief and to really take it head on and to begin to allow the healing process to begin early on rather than waiting till later when
it's horrible. Yeah.
All this junk is piled on top of it.
No.
We dealt with it right away, and my brothers, I'm not sure how much they have fully processed what actually took place.
Yeah.
But being real and honest about it, and relying on community. Our church community stepped in and they took over, said, we want you guys to just worry about grieving and we'll take care of the rest. So that was very, very helpful for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and it's so important. I think that's like a big part of what killed my dad is he didn't grieve as a young kid, and he just had all this bottled up energy, and it just came out in super unhealthy ways. And that's why Leslie's work is so important, the gifts of grief, and like and honoring, giving ourselves time and space to honor our grief. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if the Lord didn't grab a hold of me when he did, I think I would have continued down that path where, I don't know, I might have done something crazy. but I was spared, because I was really good at just keeping it all to myself. And I let out some things in my first episode of my podcast that people didn't know about me, including my brothers. I grew up with two of my brothers that were my best friends, and there was stuff they didn't even know because I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But, there was such freedom in sharing who I am and what I've been through and how I came out on the other side of it. And it's because I allowed myself the opportunity to be transparent and to begin the healing process.
Yeah, and that's so important. And for listeners, I mean, that is the key, like learning from people that have been through it and that have come out the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Like, study those people. What are they doing? How, it's so important because it can feel so alone and so, hopeless when you're in the middle of that spot. I mean, I've many points of my life for different reasons when I've been in that kind of pit of hopelessness, and so listening to other people that have made it through the other side is a really key part of learning how to do it. So it's really, really wonderful that you're so authentic and that you share that and give that gift. It's not easy to be vulnerable with people, and yet how we all
no. But primarily for men, it's important for us to know that you can be that, and you can't worry about what people are thinking. It doesn't matter. This is a necessary spot to be in, and being vulnerable is a positive thing, because you just don't know who's going to really take that in and say, you know what, I needed that. I remember speaking about my experience in the military, because I know some real life GI Joes, the people that have seen things blow up around them. They had held their dead best friends in their arms, and I was just underwater, just doing circles and do. But then someone said, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I cheapened my military experience. But it's like, it doesn't matter, because you took the same vow, the same oath that those that have seen the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You did the same thing they did, but take heart in the fact that you didn't have to go through what they went through.
Yeah.
But you were willing to do it, even
Absolutely.
so, because you raised your hand. You repeated those words, and whatever it takes is what you signed up for. And that was my experience as well. So I'm fortunate that I didn't go to war, but I also can empathize with those that have, because it could have been me, and thank God it wasn't, because I don't know what I'd be dealing with right now, but I can be a friend. I can be a sounding board. I can be, someone that just sits and listens while they just let it all out.
Yeah.
Trauma is a friend to many.
Yeah, absolutely.
None of us are immune to it.
Yeah.
Because we've all faced trauma of some sort in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, your work is really incredible. Your community is so lucky to have you. Really, I'm so grateful to have been connected with you, and now to be connected with you. It's awesome. Is there any kind of final words or thoughts you have that you want to share?
Man, I just want to just encourage people to just live with purpose. Everyone has a purpose. You just need to discover what your purpose is if you haven't already. But just being open to be, to just be aware, because not one of us is born without some kind of strength that gives us purpose in life. But just to be open, to be aware of what is available for you, to seek out and recognize the open doors that are presented to you, because anyone can just see an open door and say, that's for somebody else, it's not for me. Well, what if it is for you? And to be intentional, and to learn to make less excuses than you have, the day before. It's not about you. It's about what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And I believe that giving and serving is a big part of that, because it takes the focus and attention off of us. And you will be rewarded when that is your mindset. So some of us have to just simply change our mindset and not make it so much about us. It's about, what is the goal here? What is the purpose? The purpose in life for me is to make an impact and not make it about me. So
yeah, I love that. And a couple tools. One, there's a strengths finder on our website, the Shine Hope Company. There's Hope Scales, and on that you can also do the strengths finder. And if you think you don't have any strengths, well, you can take that and you can find your top 5 strengths. Really important.
I've done that.
Strengths. Have you? Awesome.
I've done that at my job. Yes.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we all should do that. I mean, it's like, got to focus more on our strengths, So
yeah.
So
because it's like, it makes you. It says that there's a balcony and then there's a basement according to your strengths.
Yeah.
So I know when I operate each day at work, it's like I see those strengths playing out.
Yeah.
Responsibility, communication, belief, connectedness, and woo. The woo one is winning when others over. So I see all my strengths, but I also see the basement side of those strengths as well. So I have to be careful to avoid those.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's wonderful. And when we're using our strengths, we feel better. And if we find our strengths and we're not using any of them in what we're doing, well, maybe we need to look at doing other things, because it's so important to use what we're good at and what it makes us feel good,
That's where you see the value. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I always say about, if you're having problems or challenges finding your purpose, think about what makes you angriest, what you get super upset about or emotional about it, and dive into that and understand understand that more, and think about how you can have impact in that space. Because usually our emotions are really an indicator of, this is what we care so much about, And maybe we're here to have impact in that specific realm in some way, shape, or form, so.
Right. And you don't need a PhD to know what you know.
No, exactly. That's right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes. Yes. Oh, well, it's been such a pleasure connecting with you and learning more about you and sharing your strategies with our listeners. And even if it's just one listener, it's really wonderful. And
Absolutely.
I'm going to look forward to doing more work with you. I think I see that in our future somehow. So
I keep my options open.
Good. Awesome. Awesome, Thomas. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for listening in, tuning in to the Hope Matrix podcast. Remember, no matter what life brings, you got to keep shining. It's sometimes challenging to find that light. It's like we got to dig down. We got to find it and keep shining hope. So thank you for listening in today. And please share this with others if so inspired. And Kathryn at the Hope Matrix, checking out today. Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kathryn. I appreciate you.
You too. Awesome. Very nice. Thank you.
So thank you all for listening in to the Hope Matrix podcast. We want to shine a light that hope is teachable, hope is measurable and teachable, and provide you with actionable insights for how you can start activating hope in your life today, and provide a framework so you can start talking about hope with other people and practice these skills together, because we are better with hope. Please feel free to check out the shinehopecompany.com, where we list all of our resources around how to hope. We have a lot of free programs for how to hope, including the 5-day challenge, our hope infographic with a lot of skills that showcase how to hope, and articles of how to incorporate hope into your life. We have the Hope Beat Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter that shares strategies for hope. We have a My Hope Story template, so you can write your own hope story today. Also my Hope Hero, so we can share what our heroes are doing to activate hope in their lives. And this is especially good with youth, so they can start looking up to people that have overcome similar challenges to them and seeing how these heroes use the Shine Hope framework. We have a Hopeful Minds for Teens program, a Hopeful Minds overview, educator guides. We have a new evidence-based college course so you can activate hope on the college campus. There are programs in the workplace, overview courses, 90-minute courses for learning the what, why, and how to hope. What I want you to know about hope is it's a skill. You've got to practice these skills to become hopeful. It's easy to fall into despair and helplessness when we deal with challenges in life, and it takes intentional work and practice to get to hope. And yet it is always possible. So no matter what life brings, keep shining hope. Thanks so much for listening in. Have an awesome day. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. It should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Kathryn Goetzke, do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.